Good morning. We pick up today's reading of the Pilgrim's Progress with Christian and hopeful in the dungeon of giant despair, talking about what to do and feeling very low. Brothers, said Christian, what shall we do? The life we now live is miserable. For my part, I know not whether it is best to live thus or to die out of hand. My soul chooseth strangling rather than life, and the grave is more easy for me than this dungeon. Shall we be ruled by the giant? Hopeful. Indeed, our present condition is dreadful, and death would be far more welcome to me than thus forever to abide. But yet let us consider the Lord of the country to which we are going hath said, Thou shalt do no murder. No, not to another man's person, much more then are we forbidden to take his counsel to kill ourselves. Besides, he that kills another can but commit murder upon his body, but for one to kill himself is to kill body and soul at once. And moreover, my brother, thou talkest of ease in the grave, but hast thou forgotten the hell whither for certain the murderers go? For no murderer hath eternal life, etc. And let us consider again that all the law is not in the hand of giant despair. Others, so far as I can understand, have been taken by him as well as we, and yet have escaped out of his hand. Who knows but that God that made the world may cause that giant despair may die, or that at some time or other he may forget to lock us in, or but he may in short time have another of his fits before us, and may lose the use of his limbs. And if ever that should come to pass again, for my part, I am resolved to pluck up the heart of a man, and to try my utmost to get from under his hand. I was a fool that I did not try to do it before. But however, my brother, let's be patient and endure a while. The time may come that may give us a happy release. But let us not be our own murderers. With these words, Hopeful at present did moderate the mind of his brother, so they continued together in the dark that day in their sad and doleful condition. Well, towards evening the giant goes down into the dungeon again to see if his prisoners had taken his counsel. But when he came there he found them alive, and truly alive was all. For now, what for want of bread and water, and by reason of the wounds they received when he beat them, they could do little but breathe. But I say he found them alive, at which he fell into a grievous rage, and told them that seeing they had disobeyed his counsel, it should be worse with them than if they had never been born. At this they trembled greatly, and I think that Christian fell into a swoon. But coming a little to himself again, they renewed their discourse about the giant's counsel, and whether yet they had best take it or no. Now Christian again seemed to be for doing it, but Hopeful made his second reply, as followeth. My brother, said he, rememberest thou not how valiant thou hast been before? Apollyon could not crush thee, nor could all that thou didst hear or see or feel in the valley of the shadow of death. What hardship, terror, and amazement hast thou already gone through, and art thou now nothing but fear? Thou seest that I am in the dungeon with thee, a far weaker man by nature than thou art. Also this giant has wounded me as well as thee, and hath also cut off the bread and water from my mouth. And with thee I mourn without the light. But let's exercise a little more patience. Remember how thou playedst the man at Vanity Fair, and was neither afraid of the chain nor cage, nor of bloody death? Wherefore let us, at least to avoid the shame that becomes not a Christian to be found in, bear up with patience as well as we can. Now night being come again, and the giant and his wife being in bed, she asked him concerning the prisoners, if they had taken his counsel. To which he replied, They are sturdy rogues. They choose rather to bear all hardship than to make away themselves. Then said she, Take them into the castle yard tomorrow, and show them the bones and skulls of those that is already dispatched, and make them believe, ere a week comes to an end, thou also wilt tear them to pieces, as thou hast done their fellows before them. So when morning was come, the giant goes to them again, and takes them into the castle yard, and shows them as his wife had bidden him. These, said he, were pilgrims as you once were, and they trespassed in my grounds as you have done. And when I thought fit, I tore them in pieces. And so within 10 days I will do to you. So get you down to your den again. And with that he beat them all the way thither. And they lay therefore all day on Saturday in a lamentable case as before. Now when night was come, and when Mrs. Diffidence and her husband Giant got to bed, they began to renew their discourse of the prisoners, and withal the old Giant wondered that he could neither by blows nor counsel bring them to an end. And with that his wife replied, I fear, said she, that they live in hope that some will come to relieve them, or that they will have picklocks about them, by means of which they can escape. And sayest thou so, my dear, said the Giant, I will therefore search them in the morning. Well, on Saturday, about midnight, they began to pray, and continued in prayer till almost the break of day. Now a little before it was day, good Christian, as one half amazed, brake out in this passionate speech. What a fool, quoth he, am I, to thus lie here in a stinking dungeon, where I may as well walk at liberty. I have a key in my bosom, called Promise, that will, I am persuaded, open any lock in Doubting Castle. Then said Hopeful, that's good news. Good brother, pluck it out of thy bosom and try. And then Christian pulled it out of his bosom and began to try at the dungeon door, whose bolt, as he turned the key, gave back, and the door flew open with ease, and Christian and Hopeful both came out. Then he went to the outward door that leads into the castle yard, and with his key opened that door also. Afterwards he went to the iron gate, for that must be opened too. But that lock went damnable hard, yet the key did open it. Then they thrust open the gate to make their escape with speed. But that gate, as it opened, made such a creaking that it waked Giant Despair, who, hastily rising to pursue his prisoners, felt his limbs to fail, for his fits took him again, so that he could by no means go after them. Then they went on, and they came to the king's highway again, and so were safe, because they were out of his jurisdiction. Now, when they were gone over the stile, they began to contrive with themselves what they should do at that stile to prevent those who should come after from falling into the hands of Giant Despair. So they consented there to erect a pillar, and engrave upon it the side thereof. Over this stile is the way to Doubting Castle, which is kept by Giant Despair, who despiseth the king of the celestial country, and seeks to destroy his holy pilgrims. Many, therefore, that followed after read what was written, and escaped the danger. This song they sang as follows, as they finished. Out of the way we went, and then we found what 'twas to tread upon forbidden ground. And let them that come after have a care, lest heedlessness makes them as we to fare, lest they for trespassing his prisoners are, whose castle's Doubting, and whose name's Despair. Then they went, till they came to the Delectable Mountains, which mountains belong to the lord of that hill of which we have spoken before. And so they went up to the mountains to behold the gardens and orchards and vineyards and fountains of water, where also they drank and washed themselves, and did eat freely of the vineyards. Now there was on top of these mountains shepherds feeding their flocks, and they stood by the highway side. The pilgrims therefore went to them, and leaning upon their staffs, as is common with weary pilgrims when they intend to talk with anyone by the way, they asked, Whose delectable mountains are these, and whose sheep be the sheep that feed upon them? These mountains are Emmanuel's land, the shepherd said, and they are within sight of his city, and the sheep also are his, and he laid down his life for them. Christian, is this the way to the celestial city? Shepherd, you are just in your way. How far is it thither? Too far for any but those that shall get thither indeed. Is the way safe or dangerous? Safe for those for whom it is to be safe, but transgressors shall fall therein. Christian, is there in this place any relief for pilgrims that are weary and faint in the way? The Lord of these mountains hath given us a charge not to be forgetful to entertain strangers. Therefore the good of the place is before you. I saw also in my dream that when the shepherds perceived that they were wayfaring men, they also put questions to them, to which they made answer as in other places, as Whence came you, and how you got into the way, and by what means you were preserved therein? But for few of them that began to come hither do show their face on these mountains. But when the shepherds heard their answers, being pleased wherewith, they looked very lovingly upon them, and said, Welcome to the Delectable Mountains. The shepherds, I say, whose names were Knowledge, Experience, Watchful, and Sincere, took them by the hand, and had them to their tents, and made them partake of that which was ready at present. They said, moreover, we would that you should stay here a while, and to acquaint with us, and yet more to solace yourselves with the good of these delectable mountains." Then they told them that they were content to stay, and so they went to rest that night because it was very late. Then I saw in my dream that Hopeful in the morning the shepherds called Hopeful and Christian to walk with them upon the mountains. And so we'll pick up there tomorrow. It's such a great story as they lay hold of the promises of God, and God shows himself faithful to them. Thanks for watching today.